Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Stoner. I'm with the Endurance Race Series. I am joined today by two very special guests, the owners of Swap Running and the authors of The Happy Runner, David and Megan Roche. Welcome to our Trail Tribe.
Thank you so much for having us.
We're so excited about this. This is awesome.
Yeah, we love Endurance Race Series. We love everything you do, so it's super fun to be on here with you.
Also, I'm seeing right now on the Zoom screen, it's labeled David and Addie, and our dog is currently here chilling as well, and is pumped about this.
Yep,
there she is.
There's our dog.
So when you see our hands staring down here, that's why.
She's probably the most famous of the three, right? She's not
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, so when Megan's currently not touching my leg. She's touching Addie's head.
So we were kind of, just before we got started here, we were talking about all the events and stuff. What have you guys been doing for quarantine? What's been going on with you guys, and how's coaching, the coaching business going and all that stuff for you?
Yeah, we've mostly been doing a lot of aerobic miles. So we've been using this time to kind of build an aerobic base. I actually had hamstring surgery about a year ago. So for me, it kind of worked out well to not try to get right back into racing right away and do a slow play. And then have just been supporting our athletes. You know, I think a lot of athletes have been struggling during this time period in many, many different ways. Just a lot going on in the world in general. And so really just trying to be there to support our athletes and give us as much love to the world right now as we can.
Yeah, and coaching's doing great. I mean, I think we're kind of lucky that before all this started, like if you looked at our book or anything we've ever written, we're like, we're all the way about like, well, results aren't a big deal. It's all about the process. And this is the ultimate test of that philosophy. And so, it's been super fun to see what our athletes are doing. Like, for every single one, like I can't wait till the races do start again because it's going to be epic, but already people are getting ready to unleash on some really iconic FKTs soon. And, everything from the pros that are doing that to maybe the more beginner type athletes that are like going for 5K PRs and stuff like that. So, the chasing the potential part of it unfolds over years. And I think that this is a good time to really lay that groundwork for amazing things to come.
Nice. Well, there's a lot of stuff I want to get into today, but for those that are on the call or on the webcast with us now, and those that are going to listen later, I kind of want to, if anybody doesn't know who you guys are and what you guys have accomplished over your careers, I'd like to just kind of reel those off really fast so people have an understanding of you guys. David was a 2014 USA Track and Field Trail Runner of the Year in the sub-ultra distance, two-time national champion and a three-time member of the Team USA mountain race team. And then Megan was the 2016 USATF Trail Runner of the Year in the sub-ultra distance, five-time national champion, six-time member of the Team USA, and it's just one-time North American mountain running champion. Is that right?
Yeah.
Got it. And just as a small little asterisk to those accolades, both of them are past winners of the Endurance Race Series Mountain Ridge and Blackhawk races in the past. So
honestly, that should be what we lead with in the future.
It should be, because that's got to be at the top of the list as far as what you guys have done, right?
I think that was where the first one, the Mountain Ridge one, is where I met Nicole Miracle, I believe.
I think you're right.
Yeah, Nicole was racing that one too,
I think she was at a vendor. She's like with Hoka or something.
No, she was with Roll Recovery.
Well, whatever it was, maybe we had just met a few times, but she started in Swap right around then. And if you followed Nicole Miracle since then, like she's become a many-time world champion in OCR, and it's just been crazy. So honestly, like you're like a matchmaker for our coaching service too. So many wins.
So many fun connections.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah, like I said, it's always great to have you guys come out and participate in our races. And I know our runners love to see you guys out there on the trails and stuff too. And, when you guys are competing and they get kind of that wind of like, oh, like they did the race and this time it's amazing. Cause we don't get a lot of elite athletes to come out to our events. We get a lot of newbie trail runners and those that are just getting into the sport, maybe using it as, a warm up to an ultra race. So it's kind of nice to kind of have, individuals like yourself come out and run with us and everything. But
we love your races so much. I mean, we try to get our athletes to do ERS races all the time. As you know, like I've been like a broken record asking you, like, is it these people get into this race eventually? And, for like, do you have a 5% discount code or something? And, it's like, the best for any level. I mean, we'll have pros we coach and encourage them to come out, and, you know, people that are just looking to do their first trail race. It's just the best balance of like well-designed courses, fun atmosphere, and challenging.
I was just going to say well-designed courses. I know for me as a trail runner, I'm like always horrified they're going to be off course somewhere, like wandering in the middle of the nowhere. And I remember both of those courses being so well marked. And that's one of those things as a trail runner, it's like, oh, thank gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. Over the years, I've kind of learned, A, doing races myself, or B, being in the race director business for so long, that's like one of the worst things that can happen to a runner, I think, you know, is getting lost, especially when you get lost by a mile or two. You know, and the thing that you can't control is if somebody pulls a sign, you know, that individual that pulls a sign and all of a sudden somebody's, you know, gone, you know, a mile off course, and you kind of hear it at the end. But I always try to look at it as if I was from a runner perspective, you know, if I'm running down the course, can I see the flower mark or can I see the sign coming in front of me by, you know, 30 or 40 feet, right? Because I want to make sure that the turns are always visible and everything else. So I that's one of the biggest things that I tell my staff when we're all out marking the course is, listen, mark that intersection, take a step back and look at it as if you're a runner coming down the trail. Can you see that marking? And if you can, great, then we've done the right thing. If not, then we need to reposition it and go from there. So it's really nice for you guys to say that, because that's one of the things that we and I take big pride in when I'm, you know, marking the course and setting up the courses out there and stuff. So
they're just cool courses too. Like the specific routes you take in the parks are really well thought out, and so we admire it for many reasons. I can't imagine how hard all that is.
Yeah, what's what the hardest thing is being that there's so many, especially in Colorado, being that there's so many events in a short period of time, right? The summertime is like just flooded with events. So you get to that point where if you got 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 events all happening in the same location, is trying to find a unique way to create that course without duplicating everybody else's courses, right? It's a challenge, but I love taking that on and kind of making it our own in some degree, you know. So that's always one of the funnest things about doing it. And I think that's what kind of brings up some of the way those courses are made is, you know, can we add in the technical stuff here midway through? Can we, you know, if it's been flat for the next, you know, first 6 miles, how can we add in some elevation gain right in the middle, right at the end or something, you know? So it's always kind of fun and challenging to figure that route out. So, but, well, hey, I want to get into some background with you guys, because I think some of your background is really cool. And David, I was actually listening to a podcast the other day that you were on, and I cannot remember the podcast, but it was back in October. And you guys were talking about kind of the background, and I know you went to Duke to get your law degree.
Yes.
But what I found out from that conversation is you actually went to school to play football. Is that right?
Yeah. So I used to be a big, strong guy. At least like
his neck was like 3 times the size. Yeah, it was pretty impressive.
So after I graduated high school, went to college to play football, and in the first year there, realized I wasn't cut out for football at that level. And so after stopping that, had a long road to go to get into endurance sports. Because at the time I was like a sprinter and like 60 or 70 pounds heavier than I am now. And, running was like, I distinctly remember how hard it was every step for a bit. And I always try to remember that because, I'll still have those experiences now. They're just fewer and farther in between. But I think it helps with coaching to remember not to idealize running too much because, it's not this beautiful natural thing all the time or even most of the time. It's like it's a mix of a grind and these effortless moments of transcendence that you're working to, but it's not what defines the process.
Right. What made from football to endurance? Like what was the mental transition for you going into that? Like, did you know, like when you were playing football that was something that you kind of had a passion for, is looking into the endurance thing, or is it just kind of something you fell into?
So my dad was a biker when I was growing up. And, I started back in high school, in between protein shakes and bench presses, I would watch like the Tour de France highlights and things. So I always thought that when football was over, I wanted to be an athlete for life, because I just love the process of it, the day to day. And I was like, oh, I'll be a cyclist. And so that was my first foray after football, is like I was biking a lot. And like, I don't know if you can see it here, but my collarbone on this side sticks out like 18 inches, and my wrists. And so in other words, I wasn't the best bike handler, got in a lot of crashes in races. And so, and also got good enough at that sport to realize what it took to actually reach the top level. And I wasn't cut out for that either. So then running became like the next step. And, I think for me, it was just this idea of, I want to be an athlete, hopefully if I'm lucky enough, when I'm 60, or 70 or 80, 90. My dad is now almost 70 and is still running, and like that wasn't going to ever happen in football. So, I had no dreams that I would ever play after college. I wasn't delusional. And like, I thought, well, endurance sports are the place to go. And so I didn't know where it would lead. I mean, I had big dreams, but I was still, it took a long time. I mean, it wasn't until I met Megan at Duke 4.5 years later that like I started to see, well, running might end up being something that isn't just like a very like fun side thing. It might end up being something that really structures every day, hopefully forever.
Wow. And now you said, Megan, you went to Duke as well, and you played field hockey for most of your time there, but I understand that you got into cross country.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
how did that transition happen?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the transition. So we actually met at Duke, which was crazy. So David was a law student and I was an undergrad. So I said he was like picking on the undergrad students. I think I was like 20 when I met, and I went to a law school formal, not able to drink.
I was 22.
I'm kidding, but I feel like there's a big difference between being in law school and being an undergrad. So
fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Yeah, I still make fun of him for that. But yeah, I played field hockey all growing up. I played soccer as well. Went to Duke to play field hockey, and honestly loved the sport, loved the team element of it, but always knew, kind of like David, that I had that endurance bug. Like for field hockey practices, when we got on the line to do wind sprints, I got that like nervous excitement that just reminded me of a race that I have like come to love. And so after field hockey finished up my senior year, I took a 5th year to run cross country, and it was so much fun. I learned a lot, and I also learned that I don't love being on the track and running in circles, and that my real passion is in the mountains.
So neither of you really had any kind of track background, so to speak. You just kind of.
Yeah. So I think like we both had a similar realization that took time. And again, it was really helpful, I think, in the future for coaching, because we didn't really have preconceived notions of what running was, right? Like, I think sometimes it's easy to be like, well, this is training is self-evident, what running means. But for Megan, she was a field hockey sprinter, and I was a football sprinter and lifter. So we learned all this stuff anew. And I remember for me, and I mean, we had a joke that there were a thing called Megan runs, which was you go out the door, you kind of go hard until you can't do anymore.
That's how I trained every day. So I actually remember walking onto the track team, and the track coach asking me like, so what type of workouts do you do? And I was like, really what I do is I just go out the door and I run really hard. And then eventually I decided to turn around and I run back harder. And I was like, I do that most days of the week. And he just looked at me like, what in the world is going on?
And obviously that's like terrible
that's
idea.
Horrible training.
Yeah. But like we both learned that in our own journeys. To where like that stopped working pretty quickly. And, when we wanted to see like, well, how can we keep getting better? We learned about, Megan's a doctor and she was brilliant. And, we learned about training theory and all the biochemistry and all the stuff that goes into, being able to support athletes. And like, it really helped to try to be like, okay, well, let's start with a clean slate. Like, assuming that we don't have backgrounds of like, this is what we did in high school, this is what we did in college. Like, you're starting at zero, where do you go from there? And I think it was really helpful in forming the eventual, like, what became the training philosophy of SWAP, like, in future years.
Yeah. Now, how do you guys, was there something that you knew? Because when people think of running, they don't automatically think of trail running, right? So that's unfortunately, that's kind of that thing you kind of learn about after you start running a little bit. Was there something that, did either of you or both of you get into like road running first and then transition into trail running, or you just knew right away that trail running was a little bit more of your speed and your direction?
Yeah. So like for me, so I always loved Colorado, like I had done 14ers when I was a kid. And, we didn't grow up here, but we would we'd drive out here occasionally. And so I always knew about it, but it wasn't until actually I did a trail race, a 10K trail race called the Wissahickon Trail Classic, right near where Megan grew up by coincidence, before I met her. And I was running the race. And I remember in the old days being like, every race kind of sucked, right? Like every road race I ever did it's a certain nature of what it feels like. And I wasn't at the point of my athletic career where I was fit enough to really like enjoy those experiences. But then I did this 10K and I remember just being like, wow, this is fun. Like I'm actively having fun during an event. And, after that I was like, why would I ever race on roads if an event can be this fun? And so, even now, like we'll train a lot like road runners, and how we train day to day and how our athletes train for the most part. But when it comes to racing and it comes to like big adventures and things like that, like there's nothing that beats it.
Yeah, and I saw David doing it and I was like, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. We actually, my senior year, so like some of my last days as a field hockey player, I wasn't allowed to run or race just because I was playing field hockey and my coach was like, you play field hockey only, you don't run. So we actually did a trail race together and I registered as Megan Butthead so that no one would find me in the results. And so there's like a few Megan Butthead results in North Carolina on these trail races.
Megan Butthead is fast as hell. So I was like, whoa. Get her sponsored.
Yeah, no kidding, huh? So what would be to this point, I guess that would be, what'd you call it, David? The Wiccan Hooper 10K?
Oh, Wissahickon 10K.
Was that was your first trail experience and our first trail?
Well, first trail race. Like I knew trails existed. I didn't really think about trail racing. And that race used to be I'm not sure if it probably is still around, but used to be a pretty big race that got like 500 people in Pennsylvania. And like it was just the perfect intro to this world and made like, I don't know, it's one of those moments where I'll always remember at mile 2 or whatever, going on a downhill on trails and just like, there's something where you're racing and you're on trails. It's just this totally unique experience that you can't really get through other things. It's like the thing I miss most in this, quarantine time without races is like that feeling of when you're running over a trail and you don't care necessarily about where your foot's going or anything like that. Like you turn off your brain and you're just running. And I felt that and I was like, I want more of that. That's what I want.
Nice. So I kind of want to get into, because I'll be the first to admit, I learn new things every single day, every single year, every single event that we do stuff. And there's always some things that it kind of passed me by as far as how things kind of materialize in the sport of trail running. And one of the things that I started hearing about a couple years ago was we had some runners starting to come to our races. And I was, asking them, they were training for Team USA. And I'm like, well, I didn't even know there was a mountain team for this. And so I was hoping you guys could, because I know there's a ton of people, and I was asking people because it's more prevalent in Colorado. You hear about people training for this in Colorado and being on the team. But when you ask people in San Diego about it, there's really no information about it. Like people just don't know anything about it. So I'm kind of hoping you guys could explain how the mountain team works, how you get selected, and what kind of events and where they're at, as far as being a team member for that.
So yeah, Megan will actually in a second, she has the story of how we got introduced, but to start just like with the overarching US mountain running team structure and the USATF. So it all is under the USATF, USA Track and Field, like the governing body, Mountain Ultra Trail Council, of which like Nancy Hobbs is the person that really spearheaded it from the beginning, and Richard Bolt. And essentially this framework is really what let trail running grow in the US. Like this, before ultras became the biggest thing, this like nurtured its growth from the ground up. And I'm learning, I learned all this later, but they've held national championships at most distances every year. They are the ones that do drug controls and do drug testing. And every year they have these really prestigious teams where they do one selection race to get on the world mountain running team. And our first introduction was via Megan doing the Leadville Heavy Half Marathon, right?
Yeah, and I actually didn't know who Melody Fairchild was at the time, and Melody Fairchild is a really famous runner. She had an amazing high school career, college career, and then she's gone on and had a lot of longevity in the sport, both on the roads and the trails. And so I was racing against Melody at Leadville Heavy Half, and she came up to me after the race and was like, "You should try for the U.S. mountain running team." And I was like, "There's a U.S. mountain running team?" This was back in 2013. 2014. And so that's when we headed to Loon Mountain, which was the site of the U.S. mountain running team trials, essentially. But really grateful for Melody for that introduction. I think a lot of runners, we've seen a lot of talented track and road runners come over and try their hand at the mountain running team, and it's fun to have that mix of runners into the group as well.
Yeah, and it's just such a great place of but when I said nurturing, what I mean, it's not just the elite athletes, it's people of all levels. The first trail race to do is not a 50K or 100 miler. The first trail race to do is the 10K I did or whatever. And because we have this governing body that supports these races all over and has, a framework that they all distances are relevant, it gives entry points for everyone. And so, it goes for a couple athletes on our team, like Hayden Hawks and Matt Daniels, both did their debut at the U.S. Mountain Running Championships. That was their first trail race, and now they're doing the Western States 100. But I think everyone benefits so much from the work that the U.S. Mountain and USATF have done over the years. And I think it feeds back into essentially all the opportunities that athletes have, because now, trail running is booming everywhere. If it was a stock, you would buy everything you have in it right now. And so,
even during the times of COVID.
Oh, even better time to buy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then as far as being on the team, because you guys there's races over in Europe and stuff, right? That the team goes to and everything. What do those look like as regards to doing a regular event versus an international event?
The international events are really fun, honestly. I think to start, it just kind of feels like a vacation because you're flying all the way over to Italy or Zermatt or just these incredible places with, many of these places just have cool mountain towns. And I think the fun thing about the international, some of the world championship events too, is that you're just meeting really cool people from around the world. These are people from, diverse backgrounds, whether they're racing from Canada or Italy or just all the different countries. And so it's fun to have that experience both with the other competitors, but then also with the Team USA competitors too, because you're essentially on vacation doing running in an amazing place with these great people on Team USA. And so I think it's just it's a really fun experience.
So I think the only problem is that Megan has a little bit of a sleep issue when it comes to international travel.
Yeah. We have done these trips in the past where I've been in med school. So we have 3 days to get to be over there, race, come back. And I probably don't sleep for any of those.
Yeah, there was the last one we did. I don't think you slept a wink.
No.
It's amazing.
Sleep is not one of my life skills, especially as it comes to international travel.
It's so much fun. And I think it gets back to all the different types of opportunities. We talk about this all the time. When we do an ERS race, we're wow, we are so fulfilled from this experience. It's the same amount of fulfillment we get from doing a national championship race or whatever. We're driving home high on we'll have a Coke that you have at the finish line or something and just buzzing, just that was so fun, let's do that again.
Well, I think that gets to the point that it's so much more than just the race, and that's why I love your events too. It's you show up and the community is amazing, you run the race and people are cheering you on, or you finish and there's great food, and it's that is just as important as the race itself, and it really adds to the whole experience of the day.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one thing that I've learned over the years that trail running has versus and road races don't, is the community, right? Not to say that road racing doesn't have the community, because they do, but I feel like trail running is such, it's smaller, so it's a lot more tight knit. You've got this grassroots, feel to it, where you can go in and you see the same, 20 or 30 people that you've seen at other races, and them. You can sit there and talk to them and have those same experiences and conversations with those people. And it's just really nice that I've always said that, in road races, runners are almost looked at as a number, right? Because there's 50,000, 30,000 people that will go and run Chicago or New York or even Boston. And when you get to the trail running, it's like everybody kind of knows where everybody's out on the trail. Everybody kind of, is familiar with everybody, and it's just such a great community when it's all said and done. And that's why I really love working in the industry that I do,
Yeah. I mean, I think what we've really tried to dedicate our lives to is that idea of community. Like, I think sometimes it's easy to really act like we're oversimplify that term into, everyone loves everyone and things like that. What it actually means, I think, is like that, we're all doing this act together, and we're not stratifying based on like who's winning or whatever. Like, I don't care about that. I don't want our athletes to care about that. Even our professional athletes. Like, I want us all, like, we're all in it together. I mean, we're all doing this thing. We're all waking up in the morning and putting ourselves out there and getting vulnerable. And for whatever reason, I think that that's really embraced in the trail world.
I would agree.
Like,
yeah.
not saying like everyone's like kissing and hugging and stuff, but more like you're seen, like you see someone and it's like, yeah, like we're in it, like, rather than like, maybe like, I don't know if the stereotype's true, but some of the stereotype of like, you're competing. Like, I like competition, but I never want to feel like I'm competing with an individual, right? Like, that's not something that fuels me. I don't want it to necessarily fuel athletes on the team unless they like really have an arch nemesis. I want them to be like pushing themselves and then at the end celebrating with everyone.
Yeah. So I think that's really what the trail running community is all about. And it's really nice to just continuously see that over and over after every race. And, whether you're running or going in and spectating, you can just feel the different type of energy these events and stuff. So I want to get into swap running really quick and kind of get a little bit of your philosophy. There's one thing in your philosophy that really stands out to me. And it comes from the recovery, as it says on your website, recover with the Taco Tuesday approach.
That's Megan.
I like that because I am a taco fanatic here. So what does that mean? Because I doubt that means what I'm thinking it means. So
it means exactly what you think it means. And it's also Tuesday. So it's very topical for this exact conversation right now, which it is actually Tuesday, right? In the times of COVID, I just have to check. It is Tuesday. Yes, we are confirmed. It is Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
I think for us, it just kind of gets at the heart of the overall, like, some work, swap is some work, all play. And the fact that play should really be an element in everything that we do, including recovery, including running. And that's something that we constantly trying to reinforce to our athletes is just like, do those simple things to try to find joy in all of this. And honestly, and, be authentic and honest about it with yourself and with others. And sometimes, joy isn't always possible. Like, we all have different mental states. We all have rough days here and there, but, shooting for that and being open and honest with yourself is really what it's about.
Yeah. And, so tacos, burgers, laughs, tears, all held together in like a corn tortilla shell. So,
Yeah, that's a very good Taco Tuesday metaphor.
Boom. I made it sound more made it sound like we put more thought into that than we actually do.
Than the literal thought.
Yeah.
And I'm hungry at the same time now. Dang it.
Yeah.
So what lessons have you guys learned on the trails that you kind of impart onto your clients? Like, what are some of the big things that you guys, express onto them?
I think we've both had a lot of pretty epic failures on the trails. Right alongside the successes that we've had with races, we've just had some days out there where things have gone horribly wrong. Whether that's because we're like lost and wandering in the middle of the woods where we should be on course in a race, or, you know, stomach trouble or calf trouble. I think, you know, we've really tried to embrace those failures and own them. And then eventually, with the tincture of time, laugh about them. And I think we've tried to just emphasize with athletes that it's really just about shooting your shot and going for it and taking those risks and setting yourself up for failure, because you learn about yourself, you laugh about yourself, and then you realize there's just, you know, another starting line to get back out to.
Yeah. There's no light at the end of the tunnel, just more tunnel.
Yeah, more racing. Yeah.
And so like with that in mind, like let's just, you know, turn on a light, like try to celebrate every little thing we can in that tunnel, because you know, this whole process is what it's all about. Like celebrating every single Taco Tuesday, but also like the parts of the running life that aren't quite as glamorous, you know. I actually have an article coming out tomorrow about like bad days, and bad days are ubiquitous. And like the point of a running life that makes it so powerful is not getting fast or winning a race or anything like that. Like that stuff's meaningless. What actually matters, I think, is being able to step up to the line, whatever that line is in your life, and be like, I can do this. Even if you're not sure, and even if you do fail, you're stepping back into that arena, and every single day turns into a little bit of self-belief practice. And if you flex that self-belief muscle enough, you know, you can apply that to anything in life. Your biggest dreams can come true. And that's what's so cool about running, is it's testing that self-belief in a low stake setting that matters, but it also doesn't. And, you know, if you can excel in the day-to-day process, not in the speed, but in the ability to go back out there day after day, you know, you can do anything.
Right. And then how to kind of talk about, maybe you had mentioned earlier, because you had it was a hamstring or knee injury?
Hamstring, yeah.
So from somebody who's a trail runner, whether it's beginner, novice experience, how do you mentally deal with an injury when it comes to getting back into training, the process of that? Like, what's your mindset on that process?
Yeah, I think we have a few different approaches with that. I think the first thing that we really think about is just normalizing it. So I think if you run in this sport long enough, if you push your body hard enough, if you really test your limits, chances are you probably will get injured. And chances are it's probably not your fault. And I think for a lot of athletes, like, just taking the time to accept that and remove the blame from themselves is something that can just start the healing journey and can make things a lot more pleasant as they come back. And then I think the second thing is viewing it as a time to come back stronger. The great thing about being injured is that it allows you to take that step back and say, hey, like, where do I structurally need to improve in terms of like rebuilding my foundation, getting stronger, you know, fixing weaknesses, and how is this going to make me a better athlete in the long term? And then viewing that rest as a time to improve your longevity as a runner. You know, I think if we all go full steam forward, you know, we might limit our longevity in the sport, and having the time to step back and find new cross training activities or new strength training activities is a great way to keep the joy going, a great way to get stronger.
Yeah. And getting back to what we were just talking about, like, it's the injury is the ultimate metaphor for everything else. And I think that's like where this huge power lies, because yeah, as a runner, like if you're worried about injury, choose another sport, because it's just the nature of pushing your body in this way, and testing your limits in anything. But that's the same way any amount of testing your limits works, whether it's like going through relationship difficulties, having, you know, a struggle at work, you know, whatever your big thing is. And so what I've seen in Megan in this time is, man, she's just turned into Superwoman. Like, there's nothing that can stop her. She's willing to take risks that I would never dream of. And it gives me courage to see. And, you know, I think, would that have happened without the injury? Who knows, you know? Like, would it happen without fully questioning your identity? And maybe that's the power of it all. It's like an existential crisis built in into your running life.
Yeah. Now, how do you kind of in that same thought process is how do you work with your clients and the rest periods? Like, because there's always going to be those runners that are going to go out and run 7 days a week, 6 days a week. I mean, speak on how you talk to your runners about the rest portion of it as well.
Yeah, that's not a popular conversation often at the start. But I
Yeah.
think the nice thing about swap is that honestly, we've had a lot of success with runners who have taken rest days, and I think that's helped other runners see that yeah, this is something that can lead to longevity. This is something that can increase performance over time, and so having that at the backstop is honestly very helpful. But I think it's really just getting athletes to commit to one rest day a week if possible, and there's resistance at first, but I find that athletes over time enjoy it. You know, it's a great mental reset. I think athletes realize that many times it does help them become more consistent. And usually it just takes a few Monday rest days, a few whatever day of the week rest day it is. And athletes often buy in.
Yeah. And I mean, I get to the point where I start every athlete with their first day that they're coached as a rest day, including like pros that are going to be doing 100 miles a week, like just to set the tone of this is what matters, right? Is this time, this empty space is when what we're doing actually turns around from self-destruction to building yourself up, because training without like those modulation processes is self-destruction. And I think a lot of the people that resist rest are often like have underlying mental health things that need to be addressed too. So what we try to do is really set up this place of unconditional support where we're not just talking about running, hopefully, I mean, we're talking about everything, so that, you know, the rest day fits into this broader life scheme of like, yeah, we want to push, we want to go for it, but we also want to do nothing and chill and have tacos like every day, but especially on Tuesdays.
So how do you guys, so one of the things that I talk to runners about all the time, or to some coaches about, is the strength aspect of it. How, with your clients, how do you get the strength portion involved into their training? I mean, is it, how often, is there certain exercises that you tell them to do? Because it's always one of those things, like, you know, runners, regardless if you're road or trail, they think that they don't need to work upper body. You know, their upper body strength doesn't need to be there. And it's how much leg exercises can I do, like on all that stuff. So how do you guys factor that into your training with your clients?
What we encourage athletes to do is to find a consistent and simple routine that works for them. I see a lot of times athletes get excited about strength training and they come up with these really complicated, you know, hour-long 75-minute training sessions, and it lasts about 2 weeks before they realize that it's just really hard to work that into their lives in addition to running. And so David actually has some great articles on Trainer Magazine called Speed Legs and Mountain Legs, and they're great 7-minute, 3-minute routines for athletes to do. And we find that athletes are pretty consistent with that just because they're shorter, they're easier to get done. And then we just frame it in terms of injury prevention, you know, performance. Being strong on trails matters a lot. It really does make a big difference. And then often for female athletes, strength is great for hormone production too.
Yes, I mean, we have people start with the 3-minute mountain legs routine, which you can Google, and do that 2 or 3 times a week. And then for upper body, I mean, I just like people to keep in core, just keep it super simple and do essentially, like, the goal isn't to get great at that stuff. It's just to it's to be your strongest, be a strong version of yourself, but not worry about it too much. So I'm a big fan of push-ups and chin-ups. Like, if you can do chin-ups, they're a great option to strengthen both your core and, you know, get some full body, upper body, like hormone stimulus. Push-ups are also great for the same reasons. You know, you can combine push-ups with like a plank or two. So in other words, keeping it super simple, because like I want athletes to be consistent with this their entire running lives. And I think like what Megan said, you know, you give me an hour-long routine and I'm not even doing that once. I'm doing that half of one time and then I'm done. And I mean, it's what I do. So I can't imagine what someone's doing that like works, you know, and has kids and does all that too.
Yeah. So we got, is it harder? Do you feel it's harder to run uphill or downhill?
Oh, uphill.
Well, yeah, for sure. I think sometimes in longer ultras, when your quads and your body are shot, the downhill isn't always pleasant just because you're hitting this eccentric muscle contractions, but
uphill, man.
I like uphill.
Oh my God. I think one important thing I try to talk about especially is that uphills don't they don't get easy. You know, you have to reconceive what it means to do this stuff. It's not like uphills are bad or terrible. It just means that like they're always going to be kind of difficult in their own way. And if you can make that difficulty into something that is like a part of the process you embrace, like Megan is clearly done, based on what she's saying, like that's where you gain superpowers. So, but yeah, I also try to not idealize it, because even like, we've made the US mountain team in an uphill year. And I, to this day, like if I see an uphill on a run like today where I'm just running easy, I'm like, oh my God, it's an uphill. How can I go slow enough up this to make it while still moving forward?
Yeah. If I could have my way, I would run downhill nonstop. I do not want to go uphill whatsoever. So I'll choose a course usually that's a little bit more flat, or if I can go from up top just to downhill and go flat again, I'm fine. I don't really need to go uphill.
I love it. It's like I'm like, you give me a ski lift and a ski slope, and I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, right. The last question I got for you guys, and we have a lot of, as I said before, we get a lot of beginner trail runners and a lot of those runners that are into it with the goal of maybe doing longer distances, whether that's a full marathon or even an ultra, going into trail running. What is one like quick piece of advice that you would give any new trail runner that jumps in either A, to their first trail race, or is going out for their very first trail run?
Yeah, so I think for us, we've seen a lot of athletes who get into trail running and are immediately caught by ultras. Like, I want to do a 50K, I want to do a 100K. And I would just say that there's a lot, David mentioned this earlier, but there's a lot of fun to be had in the shorter races. Like, sign up for a trail 5K, sign up for a trail 10K, and you can learn a lot about trails in the process, but it's also really fun. And it's a great way to build up to those longer ultras, and kind of a nice introduction to the trails.
Yeah, I love that. And then it's, go as slow as you need to. There's no value judgment made in whether you need to like walk on the uphills or even stop on the uphills.
Honestly, studies show that hiking is more efficient on grades
And,
greater than 20%. So yeah.
When we talk about like there is no judgment in this community, it really isn't. Like as long as you're not judging yourself, you give yourself that grace to like actually be able to explore what you're capable of. That requires like, being okay with going pretty easy and pretty slow and relaxing. And so that's my main advice for people that are starting out is like, you're doing great. You're out there, you're giving yourself the chance. Don't worry if you need to hike every uphill or even hike some of the flats and downhills. Like trail running involves walking. Walking is trail running. Like that, even though it's called trail running, walking is within that route. Like it's the same thing. And so, if you're not running, you're still freaking awesome. Even if you don't run one step in the entire race. My mom will do trail races sometimes where she doesn't run at all. And she's a freaking trail runner. And, I think once people embrace that part of their athletic selves, it makes everything else so much easier.
Nice. Well, I want to thank you guys again for joining our Trail Tribe today, and hopefully we can have you guys back, later on. We can talk a little bit more as far as the training stuff goes, but is there anything you guys want to say before we kick off and then get out of here?
Yeah, just have a lot of fun with it. I mean, I think races are a great opportunity, as we said earlier, to take risks, to get out there and to find a lot of joy in the process. But, find fun in the simple things, like showing up to an aid station and giving everyone well, maybe not right now. I was going to say giving everyone a high five. Let's not do that right now. But, showing up to an aid station and being like a ball of joy, or like, really embracing like having a treat or something delicious after the race. So just like enjoy the entire day, enjoy the entire process of being a trail runner.
She's a doctor and a Stanford epidemiologist. So, yeah, listen to her when she gives COVID advice. But yeah, like I would just say, if you're listening to this, like if you haven't, buy a pack of races from ERS or whatever options there are to support ERS right now, because this is a really hard time on people, and races will happen again, and getting into that, putting that on your own plate is, one, good to support ERS, which does amazing work, but two, it's just freaking awesome for yourself to have these things in the future that you're gonna do. We can't predict what's gonna happen between now and then, but given how much we've loved those races, our athletes have loved those races, like that's why we're on here today. Like we mainly just want to say thank you to you, Jeff, and to ERS, and to anyone that listens.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate the support and everything you guys have done to, get athletes to come to our events and supporting, trail running and endurance race series all together. So thank you again for joining today. And I look forward to having more conversations with you guys down the road.
Thank you.
You guys are
This was so
amazing.
fun.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.